Amid the hustle and bustle of the busy downtown streets, a small figure stood out, walking alone with unsteady steps. It was Maria, an 11-year-old girl whose large, dark eyes held a sorrow too deep for someone so young. Maria was not like the other girls her age. While most were safe at home, playing or doing homework, she wandered the streets, carrying the weight of an unimaginable loss on her shoulders. Just a few months ago, her adoptive parents had been tragically taken from her life in an accident, leaving her completely alone in the world. Maria's life had always been marked by challenges. Abandoned as a baby, she spent her early years in an overcrowded orphanage where affection was as scarce as resources. At 5 years old, she was adopted by a loving couple who showed her for the first time what it was like to have a family. For 4 years, Maria experienced the joy of having a home and being unconditionally loved. But fate, cruel in its unpredictability, snatched away that newly discovered happiness. A car accident, a rainy night, and suddenly, Maria was alone again. The overburdened and inefficient social services system couldn't locate her in time, and the girl, fearing a return to the orphanage, decided to disappear into the city's streets. Since then, the streets had become her home. Maria quickly learned the harsh lessons of survival, sleeping in hidden alleyways and relying on the occasional kindness of strangers for food. But hunger was a constant companion, gnawing at her stomach and reminding her of all she had lost. On that particular night, the tempting aroma of freshly prepared food floated through the air, emanating from a luxurious restaurant on the corner. Golden Flavors, as it was called, was a renowned establishment frequented by the city's elite. Its bright windows revealed an elegant interior where well-dressed patrons enjoyed elaborate meals. Maria stopped at the entrance, her heart racing with a mix of fear and hope. She knew she didn't belong there, but hunger was stronger than common sense. Summoning all her courage, the girl pushed the heavy glass door and timidly stepped inside. The interior of the restaurant was dazzling. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, casting a soft light over tables covered with pristine white tablecloths. The clinking of silverware and the murmur of elegant conversations filled the air. For a moment, Maria stood frozen, feeling completely out of place in her tattered dress and worn-out shoes. As curious and disapproving glances from the patrons turned toward her, Maria saw a middle-aged man approaching. It was Carlos, the restaurant owner, a man known for his high standards and explosive temper. His face contorted in a look of displeasure as he addressed the little intruder. "What do you think you're doing here, girl?" Carlos hissed, his voice laden with irritation. "This is no place for beggars. Get out immediately." Maria felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she gathered all her courage to speak. "Please, sir," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "I'm very hungry. Could you give me some food? Anything would do." Carlos's expression hardened even more. "We have nothing to give. This is a prestigious establishment, not a charity. Now get out before I call security." With those harsh words, Carlos grabbed Maria's arm, dragging her towards the exit. The girl stumbled, tears now streaming freely down her dirty face. The patrons watched the scene, some with discomfort, others with indifference, but no one intervened. It was then that a firm and compassionate voice broke the tense air of the restaurant. "Stop immediately!" All eyes turned to the source of the interruption. Standing a few meters away was Anna, an elegant lady with graying hair and kind eyes. She had witnessed the entire scene, and her heart broke at the cruel treatment of the little girl. Anna, a 65-year-old widow, was a respected figure in the community. A retired teacher, she dedicated much of her time to volunteer work, especially those aimed at needy children. That night she had gone to Golden Flavors for a rare indulgence, celebrating a friend's birthday. She didn't know that fate had other plans for her evening. Anna walked decisively towards Carlos and Maria, her presence commanding respect. "How dare you treat a child like this?" she reprimanded Carlos, her voice trembling with indignation. "Can't you see she's hungry and scared?" Carlos, surprised by the sudden intervention, let go of Maria's arm. The girl stepped back, rubbing the spot where his fingers had left red marks on her delicate skin. Anna knelt next to Maria, her eyes filling with tears as she saw the girl's state up close. Maria's face was thin and pale, her eyes too big for her small face, reflecting a mix of fear and gratitude. "What's your name, dear?" Anna asked softly, extending a comforting hand. "Maria," the girl replied, her voice barely a whisper. Anna smiled gently, trying to calm the visible trembling of the girl. "Maria, can you tell me what happened? Why are you alone here?" As Maria hesitated, gathering the courage to speak, the restaurant had fallen into an attentive silence. Even Carlos, still standing nearby, seemed unable to move or speak, as if spellbound by the unfolding scene. With a voice broken by sobs, Maria began to tell her story. She spoke of the loss of her adoptive parents, the lonely nights on the streets, and the constant hunger that tormented her. With each word, Anna's heart tightened more, and silent tears ran down the woman's face. The other restaurant patrons, once so absorbed in their own conversations and meals, now listened in stunned silence. Many had tears in their eyes, touched by the girl's tragic story. When Maria finished her tale, Anna wrapped her in a tight hug, allowing the girl to finally release all the pain and fear she had kept bottled up for so long. Maria's sobs echoed in the restaurant, a heart-wrenching sound that seemed to touch even the hardest of souls. It was at that moment that something extraordinary happened. Carlos, who had been watching the scene with a mix of confusion and discomfort, suddenly stepped back as if struck by a physical blow. His face, previously twisted in a mask of irritation, now showed an expression of shock and recognition. "It can't be," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Maria? My little Maria?" Anna and Maria turned to look at Carlos, confused by his sudden change in behavior. The man was now visibly trembling, tears welling up in his eyes as he approached hesitantly. "What do you mean?" Anna asked, instinctively pulling Maria closer protectively. Carlos fell to his knees in front of them, his eyes fixed on Maria's face. "This girl," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "is my daughter. My daughter whom I thought died years ago." A murmur of astonishment rippled through the restaurant. Maria looked at Carlos with a mix of fear and curiosity, unable to fully comprehend what was happening. With trembling hands, Carlos took an old photo from his wallet. In it, a younger version of himself smiled alongside a beautiful woman, holding a girl of about 4 years old in their arms. The resemblance between the girl in the photo and the Maria standing before them was undeniable. 7 years ago, Carlos began to explain, his voice choked with emotion. "My wife and I were in a terrible car accident. I survived, but I was told that my wife and our daughter, Maria, had died. The car, it caught fire. They told me there was nothing left." Maria listened with wide eyes, vague and confused memories beginning to surface in her mind. Memories of a smiling man playing with her, of a woman singing lullabies. "But how?" Anna asked, still trying to process the surprising turn of events. Carlos shook his head, equally perplexed. "I don't know. Maybe someone pulled her out of the car before it caught fire. Maybe they found her and took her somewhere. I never knew. I never imagined." He turned to Maria, extending a trembling hand toward her. "Maria, my dear daughter, do you remember me? It's me, your father." Maria looked at the outstretched hand, then into Carlos's eyes. Something in that gaze, in that voice, awakened long-buried memories. With a sudden sob, she threw herself into Carlos's arms. "Daddy!" she cried, burying her face in his chest. "Daddy, I remember. I remember you." Carlos hugged her tightly, years of pain and regret dissolving into tears of joy and relief. The restaurant patrons, now all standing, began to applaud spontaneously, many of them openly crying at the moving scene. Anna watched, her own tears flowing freely, marveling at the miracle she had witnessed. What had begun as an act of compassion for a hungry girl had transformed into a miraculous reunion between father and daughter, long separated. In the days following that fateful night at Golden Flavors, Maria's life underwent a remarkable transformation. Carlos, determined to make up for the lost years, brought Maria to his home, a luxurious penthouse in the city center. For the girl, used to the harsh conditions of the streets, the comfort and opulence of the apartment seemed almost unreal. However, the transition was not easy. Maria, although happy to have found her biological father, felt out of place in this new environment. Years of survival on the streets had left deep emotional scars, and the girl frequently woke up in the middle of the night, scared and disoriented. Carlos, on the other hand, faced his own challenges. Accustomed to a solitary life focused on work, he now found himself responsible for a traumatized girl he barely knew. His inexperience as a father was evident, and he often felt lost about how to handle Maria's emotional needs. It was at this critical moment that Anna proved to be an unexpected blessing. The retired teacher, moved by deep compassion, offered to help with Maria's adjustment. Carlos, recognizing his own limitations, gratefully accepted the offer. Anna began visiting daily, bringing with her the patience and understanding that only years of experience with children could provide. She spent hours with Maria, listening to her stories, helping her process her emotions, and gradually reintroducing her to the simple joys of childhood she hadn't experienced in so long. One afternoon, about a week after the reunion, Anna arrived at the apartment to find Maria curled up in a corner, trembling and crying silently. Carlos stood nearby, a look of helplessness on his face. "She had a nightmare during her nap," he explained, his voice trembling with concern. "I can't calm her down." Anna approached Maria quietly, sitting on the floor beside her. "It's okay, dear," she whispered gently. "You're safe now. Do you want to tell me about your dream?" Slowly, between sobs, Maria began to speak. She described recurring nightmares about being lost and alone, about the constant fear she felt on the streets. Anna listened attentively, offering words of comfort and reassurance. Meanwhile, Carlos watched, amazed at Anna's ability to connect with his daughter. It was then that he truly understood how much he had to learn to be the father that Maria deserved. In the following weeks, a routine began to establish itself. Anna came every morning, helping Maria with basic studies to eventually prepare her for returning to school. Afternoons were often spent at the nearby park, where Anna and Carlos watched Maria rediscover the joy of playing and interacting with other children. Carlos, inspired by Anna's example, began to make changes in his own life. He reduced his work hours at the restaurant, delegating more responsibilities to his trusted employees so he could spend more time with Maria. Together, father and daughter started to build memories: bike rides in the park, cooking sessions at home, cozy movie nights. A month after the reunion, during a dinner at home with Anna, Maria surprised everyone with an unexpected question. "Dad," she said timidly, "can we do something to help the kids who are still on the streets, like I was?" The silence that followed was charged with emotion. Carlos looked at his daughter, feeling a mix of pride and admiration for the compassion she showed, despite everything she had been through. "Of course we can, my love," he responded, his voice choked with emotion. "What do you suggest?" Maria thought for a moment, then her eyes lit up. "What if we use the restaurant? We could give food to those who need it." Anna smiled, excited by the suggestion. "What a wonderful idea, Maria. You have a very generous heart." Carlos nodded, already starting to formulate plans in his mind. "We'll do that, Maria. We'll transform Golden Flavors into a place that not only serves fine meals, but also feeds those who need it most." In the days that followed, Golden Flavors underwent a transformation. Carlos implemented a program where every night free meals were offered to the homeless and needy families. The restaurant became a symbol of hope and compassion in the community. Maria, now surrounded by the love and care she had been denied for so long, flourished. Her smile, once rare and timid, now lit up the restaurant every night as she helped serve those who, like her once, needed a bit of kindness. The story of Maria, Carlos, and Anna quickly spread throughout the city. Local newspapers published articles about the incredible reunion and the subsequent transformation of the restaurant. The community responded with overwhelming support, with many customers making additional donations to support the free meal program. As the months passed, the relationship between Maria and Carlos continued to strengthen. With Anna's gentle guidance, Carlos learned to be not only a provider, but a truly present and loving father. Maria, for her part, slowly left behind the traumas of the past, allowing herself to trust and love again. Anna, who had initially planned to help only temporarily, became a constant and beloved presence in their lives. Her wisdom and unconditional love filled a void that neither Carlos nor Maria knew they had. A year after that fateful night at the restaurant, the three gathered for a special celebration. Golden Flavors was closed to regular customers, but its tables were full. Dozens of people, many of whom had benefited from the free meal program, were present to celebrate not only the anniversary of Maria and Carlos's reunion, but also the impact their story had had on the community. As Carlos stood up to make a speech, he looked around the room, his heart overflowing with gratitude. He saw Maria, now a smiling and confident girl, sitting next to Anna, the woman who had become a second mother to her and an invaluable friend to him. "A year ago," Carlos began, his voice filled with emotion, "I was a different man. Selfish, focused only on myself and my success. But thanks to a miracle and the bravery of a kind stranger," he smiled at Anna, "my life changed completely. I found my daughter, rediscovered my humanity, and learned the true meaning of family and community." If you were moved by this narrative, don't miss the emotional video in the card. There you will find more inspiring stories that will surely warm your heart and renew your faith in human kindness.